The survivors of the Depths Challenge stumbled back into their shared living quarters, exhaustion etched on every face. As the adrenaline of their ordeal faded, the reality of what they had just experienced began to sink in. They had all come face to face with death, and the narrow margin of their survival was a sobering thought. Kaleb helped Averie to her sleeping pod, concern evident in his eyes as he noticed her favoring her left leg. "You're hurt," he said, his voice low with worry. Averie shook her head, attempting a reassuring smile that came out more as a grimace. "It's just a sprain. I'll be fine." As the siblings tended to their injuries, they observed the other contestants. The alliance that had formed before the Depths Challenge seemed to have solidified through their shared ordeal. Even Jace, who had started out determined to go it alone, was now engaging in quiet conversation with Marcus. Dr. Reeves approached Kaleb and Averie, her medical expertise evident as she efficiently checked Averie's injured leg. "A minor sprain indeed," she confirmed, "but you should rest it as much as possible before the next challenge." As Dr. Reeves worked, Averie seized the opportunity to satisfy her curiosity. "Dr. Reeves," she began hesitantly, "you seem to know a lot about the Gauntlet, more than someone from the upper sectors should." The older woman's hand stilled for a moment before she resumed her ministrations. "You're very perceptive, Averie," she said softly. "You're right. I know more than I should. And that knowledge is precisely why I'm here in the Gauntlet instead of in my comfortable laboratory in Sector 2. Kaleb leaned in, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" Dr. Reeves looked around cautiously before continuing in a hushed tone. "I was part of a research team studying the long-term effects of the Gauntlet on New Providence's population dynamics. But the more I dug, the more I realized that the Gauntlet isn't just a method of population control, or a way to test the fitness of citizens. It's something much bigger, much more insidious." Averie's eyes widened. "What did you find?" "I found evidence suggesting that the Gauntlet is connected to something outside of New Providence," Dr. Reeves replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something that challenges everything we've been told about our isolated existence." Before she could elaborate further, a chime sounded, signaling the delivery of their post-challenge meal. The conversation was put on hold as the contestants gathered around the central table, their bodies crying out for nourishment after the grueling challenge. As they ate, Kaleb couldn't help but notice the changed dynamics within the group. Mara, who had taken on a leadership role, was deep in discussion with Zara and Kai, likely strategizing for future challenges. Marcus seemed to have formed a bond with Jace, the shared experience of the Depths having softened the latter's initially hostile attitude. Averie nudged Kaleb, directing his attention to a small device in her hand. Kaleb recognized it as a piece of tech she had managed to salvage and conceal during their processing. His sister's ability to repurpose technology never ceased to amaze him. "I've been scanning for electromagnetic frequencies," Averie whispered, "and I've detected something strange. There are signals coming from somewhere deep within the Gauntlet structure, signals that don't match any known New Providence communications protocols." Kaleb's mind raced with the implications. Between Dr. Reeves's revelations and Averie's discovery, it was becoming clear that the Gauntlet held secrets far beyond what they had initially imagined. As the meal concluded and the contestants began to settle in for some much-needed rest, Kaleb pulled Averie and Dr. Reeves aside. "We need to find a way to investigate further," he said. "Whatever's going on here, it's bigger than just surviving the Gauntlet. We might be onto something that could change everything we know about New Providence." Dr. Reeves nodded gravely. "I agree. But we must be cautious. The Gauntlet is watching us constantly. One wrong move, and we'll be eliminated before we can uncover the truth." Averie's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we'll have to be smarter than the Gauntlet. We'll use the challenges themselves as cover for our investigation." As they began to formulate a plan, a sudden announcement interrupted their hushed conversation. "Attention contestants. Prepare for an unscheduled challenge. Report to the main arena in 10 minutes. A ripple of surprise and apprehension went through the group. An unscheduled challenge was unprecedented, at least as far as they knew. As they filed out of their living quarters and into the sterile corridors of the Gauntlet, Kaleb felt a mix of fear and excitement. Whatever this challenge was, it was an opportunity, not just to survive, but to push further into the mysteries surrounding them. The main arena, when they entered it, was unlike anything they had seen before. It appeared to be a massive holographic chamber, currently projecting an image of a stark, featureless plane stretching as far as the eye could see. The voice of the Gauntlet's overseer filled the space. Contestants, this challenge will test not just your physical abilities, but your mental fortitude and ability to discern reality from illusion. Trust nothing but yourselves. The last four standing will proceed to the next round. Before anyone could react, the holographic plane shimmered and transformed. Suddenly, they were standing in the midst of a dense alien forest. Strange, bioluminescent plants pulsed with eerie light, and unseen creatures made otherworldly sounds in the distance. Kaleb reached for Averie's hand, only to find that she wasn't there. Panic surged through him as he realized that they had all been separated, each contestant now alone in this bizarre, fabricated wilderness. "Averie!" he called out, but his voice seemed to be swallowed by the dense foliage around him. As he began to move, searching for his sister and trying to make sense of his surroundings, Kaleb realized that this challenge was more than just a test of survival skills. It was a psychological ordeal designed to break them down mentally. The forest around him shifted and changed with every step. Paths that seemed clear would suddenly disappear, replaced by impenetrable thickets. Visions of other contestants would appear and vanish like mirages, leaving Kaleb unsure if he was seeing reality or holographic trickery. Through it all, Kaleb clung to one thought. He had to find Averie. Everything else, the mystery of the Gauntlet, the secrets of New Providence, all of it paled in comparison to ensuring his sister's safety. As he pushed deeper into the ever-changing forest, Kaleb began to notice patterns in the chaos. Certain plants, when touched, would cause the environment to shift in predictable ways. By observing closely and using the analytical skills he'd honed in Sector 7, he started to navigate the illusory landscape more effectively. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice calling out, "Kaleb, can you hear me?" It was Averie, her voice coming from somewhere to his left. Caleb's heart leaped, but he forced himself to remain cautious. This could be another trick of the Gauntlet. "Averie?" he called back. "If that's really you, tell me something only you would know." There was a pause then. "When we were kids, you tried to build me a toy robot out of scraps from the recycling plant. It caught fire and nearly burned down our quarters, but you made me promise never to tell Mom and Dad." Relief flooded through Kaleb. It was really her. Following the sound of her voice, he finally broke through a holographic barrier to find Averie standing in a small clearing. The siblings embraced, both of them shaking with relief and pent-up tension. "I was so worried," Kaleb murmured. Averie pulled back, her eyes shining with excitement despite their ordeal. "Kaleb, you won't believe what I've discovered. This holographic technology, it's far beyond anything New Providence is supposed to have, and I think I've found a way to use it to our advantage." Before she could explain further, the forest around them shimmered and changed once again. This time, they found themselves on what appeared to be the edge of a massive chasm. Across the gulf, they could see other contestants, Dr. Reeves and Marcus on one side, Mara and Jace on another, and Zara and Kai off in the distance. The voice of the overseer boomed out once more. "Congratulations on finding your partners. Now comes the true test. Cross the chasm to safety. But be warned, only one pair can make it across. The others must fall." Kaleb and Averie exchanged a look of determination. They had come too far to fail now. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, unraveling the mysteries of the Gauntlet and uncovering the truth about their world. As they began to assess their options for crossing the chasm, both siblings knew that this challenge would test not just their physical abilities, but their moral compass as well. Could they find a way to survive without condemning others to failure? And in doing so, could they maintain their humanity in the face of the Gauntlet's cruel design? The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and with it, the chance to delve deeper into the hidden depths of the Gauntlet. and perhaps to finally glimpse the truth that lay beyond the walls of New Providence. The chasm yawned before them, a seemingly impossible obstacle that separated the contestants from safety. Kaleb and Averie stood at the edge, their minds racing to find a solution that wouldn't condemn the others to failure. "We need to think outside the box," Averie muttered, her eyes scanning the environment for any clues or hidden mechanisms. "The Gauntlet wants us to turn on each other, but there has to be another way." Kaleb nodded, trusting his sister's intuition. He watched as the other pairs began to move, each adopting different strategies. Mara and Jace were attempting to construct a makeshift bridge using materials from the surrounding holographic forest. Dr. Reeves and Marcus seemed to be searching for a hidden path along the chasm's edge. Zara and Kai, true to form, were scaling down the chasm wall itself, looking for a way to cross at a lower point. "Look," Averie suddenly said, pointing to a series of faint glimmers in the air above the chasm. "Those distortions in the hologram. I think they might be indicating a path." Kaleb squinted, barely able to make out what Averie was seeing. "But how can we be sure it's not just another trick?" Averie's eyes lit up with that familiar spark of inspiration. "We can't. But remember what the Overseer said? Trust nothing but yourselves. What if that's the key? We have to trust in our ability to perceive the truth, even when our eyes are telling us something different." Understanding dawned on Kaleb. "So we walk on air, trusting that there's actually a path there?" "Exactly," Averie confirmed. "But we need to warn the others. This challenge, it's not about beating them. It's about all of us overcoming our doubts." Without hesitation, Kaleb cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted to the other contestants, explaining Averie's theory. There was a moment of disbelief, then cautious hope as they realized this might be their chance to all make it across. One by one, the pairs began to step out onto the invisible bridge. It was a heart-stopping sight, watching them walk on seemingly nothing but air. Some stumbled, their faith wavering, but encouragement from the others helped them regain their footing. Kaleb and Averie went last, their hands clasped tightly as they took their first steps into the void. The sensation was disorienting, their eyes insisting they were about to plummet, while their feet found solid ground with each step. As they neared the center of the chasm, the holographic environment began to flicker and change. Suddenly they found themselves not in a forest, but in a stark metallic corridor that looked eerily familiar. This is Sector 7, Kaleb gasped, recognizing the worn walls and flickering lights of their home. But it wasn't quite right. As they continued forward, they saw scenes from their past playing out around them, their parents, alive and well, going about their daily routines. A younger Kaleb and Averie, carefree and unburdened by the harsh realities of their world. "It's trying to distract us," Averie said, her voice tight with emotion. "To make us lose focus and fall." Kaleb nodded, forcing himself to look ahead rather than at the painfully nostalgic scenes around them. "Stay focused on the path. These are just memories, not reality." As they pressed on, the visions became more intense. They saw moments from their past that they had tried to forget. The day their father didn't come home from the factory, the long nights as their mother's health declined, the constant struggle to survive in the unforgiving environment of Sector 7. Tears streamed down Averie's face, but she kept moving forward, her grip on Kaleb's hand never wavering. "It's not just showing us the past," she said. "It's making us confront it. All the pain, all the loss, it's part of what made us who we are." Kaleb felt a lump in his throat as he realized the truth of her words. And who we are is what's getting us through this. Our experiences in Sector 7, everything we've been through. It's prepared us for the Gauntlet in ways we didn't even realize. As they neared the other side of the chasm, the visions faded, leaving them once again in the holographic forest. They stepped onto solid ground, joining the other contestants who had already made it across. There was a moment of shared relief and triumph as they realized they had all survived the challenge. But before they could celebrate, the voice of the Overseer filled the air once more. "Impressive," it said, a note of genuine surprise in its tone. "You've demonstrated not just physical prowess, but mental resilience and the ability to work together in the face of adversity. Perhaps you are more than we anticipated." The holographic environment shimmered and dissolved, revealing the true nature of their surroundings. They stood in a massive dome-shaped room filled with advanced technology unlike anything they had seen in New Providence. As the contestants looked around in awe, Averie's eyes widened in realization. "This isn't just a challenge room," she whispered to Kaleb. "This is some kind of control center." Before they could investigate further, a panel in the wall slid open, revealing a figure that made them all freeze in shock. It was a man, but unlike any they had seen before. His body seemed to be a blend of flesh and machine, with implants visibly integrated into his skin and a gleaming metallic eye that scanned them with inhuman precision. "Congratulations, survivors," the man said, his voice a perfect match for the Gauntlet's overseer. "You've earned the right to learn the truth about the Gauntlet, about New Providence, and about the world that lies beyond." Kaleb instinctively moved closer to Averie, his protective instincts on high alert. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I am Arcturus, the architect of the Gauntlet and the guardian of humanity's future. And you, my young friends, have just taken your first step into a much larger world." Over the next hour, Arcturus revealed a truth that shook the contestants to their core. New Providence, he explained, was not the last bastion of humanity as they had been led to believe. It was one of several controlled environments, each designed to cultivate different traits in their populations. "The collapse was not an accident," Arcturus said, his words heavy with the weight of history. "It was a calculated decision made by those who foresaw the true threats facing our species. Climate change, resource depletion, the potential for catastrophic warfare, all were leading us down a path to extinction." He went on to explain that a group of visionaries, of which he had been a part, had decided to take drastic action. They had engineered the collapse, allowing them to reset human civilization and guide its development along carefully controlled lines. New Providence, with its focus on efficiency and technological advancement, the agricultural enclaves, preserving our connection to the earth, the nomadic tribes of the wastelands, honing our adaptability. Each plays a crucial role in ensuring humanity's survival and evolution. As Arcturus spoke, holographic displays came to life around them, showing glimpses of these other societies. Kaleb and Averie exchanged glances, their minds reeling from the implications of what they were hearing. "And the Gauntlet?" Dr. Reeves asked, her voice tight with barely contained anger. "What role does this barbaric spectacle play in your grand design?" Arcturus turned his artificial eye on her, its glow intensifying. "The Gauntlet is the crucible in which we forge the best of humanity. It tests not just physical and mental attributes, but moral fiber, adaptability, and the capacity for growth under extreme pressure. Those who succeed here become the seeds from which we cultivate the next phase of human evolution." Kaleb felt a surge of revolt at the cold, calculating way Arcturus spoke of human lives. "You're playing God," he said, his fists clenching at his sides, "deciding who lives, who dies, who's worthy of your next phase. What gives you the right?" Arcturus's expression hardened. "The right of necessity, young man. The right granted by the burden of seeing further and planning for a future that extends beyond individual lives, or even generations. We do what we must to ensure the survival of our species." As the contestants grappled with this earth-shattering revelation, Averie's mind was racing in a different direction. Her eyes darted around the control room, taking in the advanced technology, correlating it with the strange signals she had detected earlier. "The signals," she said suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. "The ones that didn't match New Providence protocols. They're not just internal communications, are they? You're in contact with something outside our world entirely." A flicker of surprise passed over Arcturus's face, quickly replaced by a calculating look. "Very perceptive, young lady. Yes, we maintain contact with, let's call them interested parties, beings who have a vested interest in humanity's development and potential." The implication hung in the air, too enormous to be spoken aloud. Aliens. They were talking about contact with alien life. As the contestants tried to process this latest bombshell, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Arcturus's head snapped towards a bank of monitors, his cybernetic eye flashing rapidly. "Impossible," he muttered. "The containment protocols." Before he could finish, the entire room shook with the force of an explosion. Smoke began to pour in through ventilation shafts, and the sound of gunfire echoed from somewhere deeper in the facility. Arcturus turned back to the contestants, his composure cracking for the first time. "It seems our time has been cut short. A faction that opposes our methods has launched an attack on the Gauntlet. They call themselves the Liberation Front, and they seek to free humanity from our guidance." Another explosion rocked the room, closer this time. Arcturus moved swiftly to a control panel, his fingers dancing over the interface. "I'm initiating emergency protocols. The Gauntlet will be sealed off, but you'll have access to escape pods. Use them to return to New Providence. Warn them of what's coming." As sections of the wall began to slide open, revealing sleek, pod-like vehicles, Kaleb grabbed Arcturus's arm. "Why are you helping us? Why not just let the Liberation Front take us?" Arcturus's gaze met Kaleb's, and for a moment, there was something almost human in his expression. "Because you've proven yourselves worthy. You represent the best chance for humanity's future. The choice of what to do with the knowledge I've given you, that's your gauntlet now." With that, Arcturus turned and disappeared through a hidden door, leaving the contestants to face their next challenge. As alarms blared and the facility shook around them, they had to decide. Take the escape pods back to a New Providence that would never be the same, or plunge into the unknown and join the fight that was raging through the Gauntlet. Kaleb looked at Averie, seeing his own mix of fear and determination reflected in her eyes. Whatever they chose, they would face it together. The game had changed once again, but this time, they weren't just players. They were the wild cards that could reshape the entire board. As they made their decision, the world they thought they knew crumbled around them, and the true scope of their journey began to unfold. The Gauntlet had been just the beginning. The real test, the fight for humanity's future, was about to begin. The decision was made in a split second, born of instinct and the unshakable bond between the siblings. Kaleb and Averie exchanged a single glance, a lifetime of understanding passing between them, and they knew they couldn't go back to New Providence, not now, not with what they knew. "We fight," Kaleb said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Averie nodded, her eyes bright with a mix of fear and determination. "We find the truth." Their fellow contestants seemed to shake off their shock, each coming to their own decisions. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, her face set with resolve. "I've spent too long hiding from the truth. I'm with you." One by one, the others joined them. Even Jace, who had started this journey determined to stand alone, grudgingly agreed to stick with the group. As the facility shook with another explosion, they moved swiftly. Instead of heading for the escape pods, they followed the sounds of conflict deeper into the Gauntlet. Averie led the way, her keen mind already working to decipher the layout of the facility based on what they'd seen. They rounded a corner and came face to face with their first taste of the battle raging within the Gauntlet. A group of fighters, their faces hidden behind high-tech masks, were engaged in a firefight with what appeared to be Gauntlet security forces. The technology on display was beyond anything they'd seen in New Providence. Energy weapons sizzling through the air and personal force fields flickering as they absorbed impacts. "Those must be the Liberation Front," Mara muttered, her military training evident in the way she assessed the situation. Before they could decide how to proceed, one of the masked fighters spotted them. There was a moment of tension as weapons were raised. Then the fighter called out, "Contestants, how did you get here?" Kaleb stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not with the Gauntlet. We want to know the truth." The fighter seemed to hesitate, then nodded sharply. "Follow us, quickly!" What followed was a harrowing journey through the bowels of the Gauntlet. The contestants, led by their newfound allies, navigated through firefights, avoided patrols of security drones, and witnessed the true scale of the facility that had been hidden beneath the challenges they'd faced. As they ran, Averie's mind was working overtime, piecing together everything they were seeing. "This place," she panted to Kaleb, "it's not just an arena. It's a research facility, maybe even a command center of some kind." Kaleb nodded grimly. "And I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of what's really going on here." Finally, they reached what appeared to be a hangar bay. Sleek aircraft, unlike anything they'd seen before, sat ready for departure. The masked fighter who had first encountered them turned, reaching up to remove their helmet. The face revealed was that of a young woman, her eyes sharp and determined. "I'm Lyra," she said. "Welcome to the Liberation Front. We're getting you out of here." As they boarded one of the aircraft, alarms blaring all around them, Kaleb couldn't help but ask, "Where are we going?" Lyra's expression was grim as she strapped herself into the pilot's seat. "To the one place in this world that's truly free. We're heading for the neutral zone." The takeoff was rough, the hangar bay doors barely opening in time as Lyra skillfully piloted the craft out of the Gauntlet. As they soared into the sky, the contestants got their first real look at the world outside New Providence. The landscape below was a patchwork of devastation and rebirth. Vast stretches of wasteland gave way to pockets of green, areas where nature was slowly reclaiming what had been lost. In the distance, they could see the towering walls of what must have been other controlled cities like New Providence. "Everything we knew was a lie," Averie whispered, her face pressed against the window. The flight lasted for hours, taking them far beyond the territories they had believed made up their entire world. As the sun began to set, they approached a mountain range that seemed to stretch endlessly across the horizon. "The neutral zone," Lyra explained, gesturing to a hidden valley nestled within the peaks. "A place outside the control of the architects, where free people from all the enclaves come together." As they descended into the valley, the true nature of the neutral zone revealed itself. It was a bustling settlement, a melting pot of cultures and technologies from all the different controlled environments. People from New Providence mingled with nomads from the wastelands. Agricultural workers traded with tech specialists. It was a vision of what the world could be without the rigid control of the architects. The aircraft touched down on a makeshift landing pad, and as the contestants disembarked, they were met by a diverse group of individuals who seemed to be in charge. An older man with weathered features stepped forward. "Welcome to Haven," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I'm Janus, one of the founders of the Liberation Front. We have much to discuss." The next few hours were a whirlwind of revelations and explanations. Janus and the other leaders of the Liberation Front filled in the gaps in the contestants' knowledge, painting a picture of a world far more complex than they had ever imagined. The architects, they learned, were a group of scientists and visionaries who had seen the trajectory of human civilization and decided to take drastic action. The collapse had been engineered, a controlled demolition of the old world to make way for their grand experiment. They divided humanity into controlled environments, Janus explained, each designed to cultivate specific traits and technologies. New Providence for advanced technology and efficiency. The agricultural enclaves for sustainable farming practices. The wasteland tribes for adaptability and resilience. Averie, her mind racing with the implications, couldn't help but interject. "And the Gauntlet? Where does that fit in?" A woman named Sarah, who had been introduced as Haven's chief scientist, took over the explanation. "The Gauntlet serves multiple purposes. It's a way to identify individuals with exceptional abilities, yes, but it's also a testing ground for the architect's more extreme ideas." She went on to explain that the Gauntlet was where the architects pushed the boundaries of human capability, using a combination of advanced technology and carefully designed challenges to force rapid adaptation and evolution. "But that's not all," Sarah continued, her expression grave. "We have reason to believe that the architects are in contact with something beyond our world. The Gauntlet may be preparation for a future they believe is coming, a future where humanity will need every advantage to survive." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. Aliens. The possibility that had been hinted at in the Gauntlet was now being stated outright. As the contestants grappled with this information, Janus stepped forward again. "We brought you here because you've seen the truth. You've experienced the Gauntlet firsthand and chosen to seek answers rather than return to the lie. Now we're offering you a choice." He explained that they could stay in Haven, joining the Liberation Front in their fight against the Architects, or if they chose, they could be relocated to one of the other free settlements scattered around the world. "Take some time," Janus said. "Rest, recover, and think about what you want to do. But know this, the world is on the brink of massive change. The Architects' control is slipping, and what comes next will depend on people like you." As the meeting broke up, Kaleb and Averie found themselves standing on a balcony overlooking Haven. The settlement was alive with activity, even as night fell, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who had chosen freedom over the false security of the controlled environments. "What do you think?" Kaleb asked, his voice soft. "About all of this? About what we should do?" Averie was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I think," she said slowly, "that we have a responsibility. We've been given knowledge that could change everything. We can't just hide away in Haven or pretend none of this is happening." Kaleb nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I was hoping you'd say that. So we fight?" "We fight," Averie agreed. "But not just against the Architects. We fight for the truth, for the right of every person to choose their own path. And maybe, just maybe, we help prepare humanity for whatever's coming from beyond our world." As they stood there, the weight of their decision settling over them, Kaleb couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. From scavengers in Sector 7 to potential saviors of humanity. The game had changed beyond recognition, but they had changed with it. The neutral zone represented a new beginning, a chance to reshape the world without the constraints of the Architect's vision. But it also represented a crossroads, a point of no return. Whatever path they chose from here would have consequences that would ripple out across the entire world. As the first stars began to appear in the sky above Haven, Kaleb and Averie made a silent pact. They would use everything they had learned, every skill they had honed, to fight for a future where humanity could truly be free. The Gauntlet had been just the beginning. The real challenge, the fight for the soul of their species, was about to begin. The game had evolved one final time, and Kaleb and Averie were ready to play their part in shaping the future of not just New Providence, not just Earth, but potentially the entire cosmos. The accidental survivors had become willing revolutionaries, and their greatest adventure was just beginning.